My name is April and I've always been the second choice in my family. Growing up with my older sister Gabrielle was like living in a constant shadow. She was the golden child, pretty, popular, and somehow always managed to make our parents beam with pride. I was just there. Mom and Dad never tried to hide their favoritism. When Gabrielle got straight A's, they'd take her out for a fancy dinner. When I got straight A's, I'd get a quick good job and that was it. When Gabrielle wanted new clothes, they'd spend the whole day shopping with her. When I needed new clothes, Mom would toss me her credit card and tell me to be quick about it. I thought things might change when I turned 18 and got accepted to Westlake College. I was beyond excited, finally, a fresh start. I'd worked my ass off in high school, maintaining a 3.9 GPA while also volunteering at the local animal shelter. My hard work paid off, and I got into the biology program I'd been dreaming of. The day I got my acceptance letter, my parents barely looked up from their phones when I told them. Gabrielle, who was in her final year of college, got all the attention because she'd just landed an internship at some marketing firm where she basically just made coffee for everyone. "That's nice, honey," Mom said, not even looking at me. "Did you hear about Gabrielle's internship? She's already networking." I pushed down the familiar sting of disappointment and tried to focus on the positive. College meant freedom, right? Wrong. 2 weeks before the fall semester started, my parents called me down for a family meeting. I found them sitting at the dining table, oddly serious. Gabrielle wasn't there. "April," Dad started, folding his hands on the table. "You're an adult now, and it's time you learned the value of money." I nodded, thinking maybe they were going to give me some advice about budgeting at college or something. "We've decided we won't be paying for your entire college tuition up front," Mom continued. "We'll pay year by year, depending on your performance." That seemed reasonable enough. I nodded again. "And since you're an adult now," Dad added, "you'll need to pay rent for your room." I thought I'd misheard him. "Rent, for my room, in our house?" "Yes," Mom said firmly, $700 a month. "And we expect you to show some basic gratitude for us paying for your education. That means taking over most of the household chores. And buying groceries," Dad added, "it's only fair." My jaw literally dropped, but how am I supposed to pay rent and buy groceries? "I'll be in school full-time." "Get a job," Mom shrugged, "that's what adults do." Gabrielle had a job all through college. What she conveniently left out was that Gabrielle's job was working 10 hours a week at the campus bookstore, which barely covered her weekend partying. Meanwhile, our parents paid for her apartment near campus so she wouldn't have to commute. I wanted to scream, I wanted to throw something. Instead, I took a deep breath and tried to think practically. I couldn't afford to move out on my own, not with college tuition and textbooks to worry about. If I didn't agree to their terms, they might not pay for college at all. "Fine," I said finally, "I'll get a job." And that's how my nightmare began. I started working at Sunnyside Cafe after classes, serving coffee and sandwiches to entitled rich kids who never tipped well. The money wasn't enough, so I picked up freelance work writing social media posts for small businesses. I'd stay up until 2 or 3 a.m. working on those, then drag myself to my 8 a.m. classes the next day. Meanwhile, Gabrielle graduated and got a cushy job as a social media manager at some company downtown. My parents helped her lease a brand new Honda. They bought themselves a Mercedes. They went on a cruise to the Bahamas. And me? I was scrubbing toilets, doing everyone's laundry, buying groceries I could barely afford, and still managing to maintain a 3.7 GPA my first semester. One night in December, I broke down. I was exhausted, running on 3 hours of sleep, and had just finished cleaning the kitchen after cooking dinner for everyone, dinner that I had paid for. "I can't do this anymore," I told my parents, tears streaming down my face. "I'm going to find an apartment with roommates." Mom's face hardened. "If you move out, we stop paying for college, it's that simple." "You should appreciate what we're doing for you," Dad added. "We're letting you stay in the house, aren't we? Do you know how many kids get kicked out at 18? And just like that, I was trapped. If I left, I'd lose my education. If I stayed, I'd lose my sanity. Remember, April, Mom said in that sickly sweet voice she used when she was being manipulative, family helps family. We're just teaching you how the real world works. The real world, as if they had any idea what the real world was like for me, as if they cared. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, too tired to even cry. This was my life now, working 2 jobs, doing everyone's chores, paying money I didn't have, all while trying to build a future for myself. The next 2 years of my life blurred together in an exhausting cycle of school, work, chores, and very little sleep. My day started at 6 a.m., quick shower, gulp down some coffee, rush to my morning classes. From 2 p.m. to 8 p.m., I'd work at Sunnyside Cafe, serving lattes to students who had the luxury of complaining about having to write a single 5-page paper. Then I'd come home, cook dinner, clean up, do laundry, and from 10 p.m. until about 2 a.m., I'd work on freelance social media content. Somewhere in between, I'd squeeze in studying for my own classes. I was barely sleeping 4 hours a night. The dark circles under my eyes became a permanent feature, and I lost weight I couldn't afford to lose. My few remaining friends stopped inviting me out because I always said no. I either had to work or couldn't spare the money. Meanwhile, Gabrielle's life was a stark contrast to mine. She'd landed that marketing job after graduation, an entry-level position where she worked standard hours and spent her evenings and weekends however she pleased. Mom and Dad paid the rent for her downtown apartment, a sleek 1-bedroom that cost more than what I made in a month at the cafe. They'd bought her that new Honda while I was still driving the ancient Toyota I'd saved up for in high school. The car broke down constantly, but I couldn't afford repairs, let alone a new one. My parents' demands only increased with time. One particularly brutal week during my sophomore year, Gabrielle called to announce she was going on a 2-week vacation to Cancun with friends. April, Mom and Dad said you need to clean my apartment while I'm gone. I'll leave the key with them. Just make sure everything's tidy when I get back. Oh, and water my plants. That evening, I confronted my parents about it. I was dead on my feet after a double shift at the cafe, followed by 3 hours of grocery shopping and meal prep for the family. I can't clean Gabrielle's apartment. I'm already working 2 jobs and maintaining a 3.5 GPA, I'm exhausted. Mom barely looked up from her magazine, don't be dramatic. It's just a little cleaning, and your sister deserves a nice homecoming. And what do I deserve? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Dad's expression darkened, you deserve what you work for. And right now, you're working for your education, don't forget that. The threat was clear, if I didn't comply, they might stop paying for college. I bit my tongue and nodded, anger and exhaustion warring inside me. The next weekend, I spent 6 hours cleaning Gabrielle's apartment. It was beautiful, modern appliances, a balcony with a view, stylish furniture. And filthy. Dishes crusted with weeks-old food, clothes strewn everywhere, bathroom that looked like it had never seen a scrub brush. She'd been living like a slob because she knew someone else would clean up her mess. I scrubbed and vacuumed and organized, tears of frustration occasionally sliding down my cheeks. This was my sister's life, free rent, vacations, weekends off, while I was essentially a live-in maid who paid for the privilege. By the end of my sophomore year, I was running on fumes. Finals week nearly broke me. I'd developed a persistent cough from the lack of sleep, my hands shook constantly, and I'd started having anxiety attacks before shifts at the cafe. But somehow, I made it through. I maintained my GPA, kept both jobs, and continued the charade at home. Summer approached, and I was looking forward to at least dropping my course load, even though I knew I'd have to pick up more shifts at the cafe to make up for the lost freelance income. I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep going like this. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon in April, everything changed. I was in the middle of a shift at Sunnyside, balancing a tray of dirty dishes, when my phone rang. I normally wouldn't answer during work, but seeing my Uncle Jack's name flash across the screen made me pause. Uncle Jack was my dad's older brother, a successful business owner who lived 3 states away. He'd always been kind to me, sending thoughtful birthday gifts and taking genuine interest in my life whenever we saw each other. But it had been ages since we'd spoken. I ducked into the back room and answered, trying to sound more energetic than I felt. "April, how's my favorite niece?" His booming voice brought an immediate smile to my face. "Hey, Uncle Jack, I'm good, just at work right now." "Work? Aren't you supposed to be in class?" "I have classes in the mornings. I work at a cafe in the afternoons." There was a pause. "That's what your parents keep telling me, but I find it hard to believe you're that busy every single break. You used to love coming out to the ranch." I did love it. Uncle Jack's sprawling property had been my escape growing up. After his wife and son died in that terrible private jet crash 10 years ago, he'd seemed to find comfort in having me around. And I'd found peace in the quiet open spaces of his land, away from the constant comparison to Gabrielle. "I want you to come for the summer," he continued. "The whole summer, like you used to." My heart sank. "I can't, Uncle Jack. I have to work, and there's stuff I need to take care of at home." "What stuff? What could be so important that you can't take even a week off? You're a college student, summer should be your break." I didn't answer immediately, not wanting to lie but not wanting to explain either. "April," his voice grew stern, "what's going on? Why haven't you been visiting? And don't tell me it's just because you're busy." Something in his tone broke through my carefully constructed walls. Before I knew it, tears were streaming down my face, and the whole story came tumbling out: the rent, the chores, the dual jobs, the constant exhaustion, the threats to cut off my education if I didn't comply. Uncle Jack was silent for so long I thought we'd lost connection. "April," Uncle Jack's voice had an edge I'd never heard before, "I paid for your entire college education. All 4 years, up front." My brain couldn't process what he was saying. "What? 2 years ago, before you started at Westlake, I transferred the full amount to your parents. The entire tuition for all 4 years. We discussed it extensively. They were supposed to deposit it all at once." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. I grabbed the edge of a nearby shelf to steady myself. "They told me they were paying for each year separately," I managed to say. "That they would stop if I wasn't grateful enough." Uncle Jack's response was a string of colorful curses that would have made a sailor blush. "Listen to me, April, you don't need to worry about your tuition anymore. And you certainly don't need to be working yourself to death with 2 jobs. Focus on your studies. I'm going to deal with your parents." Before I could respond, he continued, "I'm sending you some money right now. Find yourself an apartment, a decent one, and get out of that house. Don't argue with me about this." I heard the clicking of a keyboard on his end. "Uncle Jack, I can't just." "You can, and you will. $5,000 just went to your account. Use it for first and last month's rent, security deposit, and some furniture. I'll be in touch again very soon." After he hung up, I stood there in the back room of the cafe, phone clutched in my trembling hand. A notification pinged. $5,000 had indeed just been deposited into my bank account. More money than I'd seen at once in years. My shift ended at 8 p.m., and I drove home in a daze, my mind racing. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed both my parents' cars there, which was unusual for a Tuesday evening. Dad usually had his poker night, and Mom typically attended her book club. The moment I opened the front door, I knew something was wrong. My parents were pacing the living room, Mom wringing her hands, Dad's face flushed with anger. Mom spotted me first. "What did you say to your uncle?" she demanded, her voice shrill. I closed the door slowly behind me. "He called me at work. He asked why I haven't visited him in 2 years. And you went crying to him about us?" Dad stepped forward, pointing his finger at me. "Telling him we're mistreating you? Making us sound like monsters?" I told him the truth, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. "That you make me pay rent and buy groceries while I'm in college. That I work 2 jobs and barely sleep 4 hours a night. You had no right," Mom shrieked, "this is family business." "And Uncle Jack is family," I countered. "He told me something interesting, that he paid for my entire college tuition 2 years ago. All 4 years, up front. My parents went very still. Is that true? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Dad adjusted his glasses, a nervous habit. We felt it was better to distribute the funds across. Where's the rest of the money? I interrupted. If you've only been paying for 1 year at a time, where's the other money Uncle Jack gave you for my education? The silence stretched between us, thick with tension. You're acting like a child, Mom hissed. Call your uncle, now, tell him we're handling your education exactly as we should be. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. Had she always been this manipulative? Had Dad always been this angry? Or had I just been too desperate for their approval to notice? Where did the money go? I asked again, calmly, just tell me the truth. Mom's shoulders sagged, common family expenses. We were just trying to do what was best for everyone. That's not an answer. Dad exchanged a look with Mom before sighing heavily, the new car, Gabrielle's car, our trip to the Bahamas. And yes, we'd been helping with Gabrielle's rent. I felt strangely numb. So you spent my college money on yourselves and Gabrielle. And then used the rent I paid you to actually pay for my classes? Neither of them met my eyes. I'm leaving, I said quietly, I'm finding my own place. What about your tuition? Dad asked, his tone shifting to something almost pleading. Uncle Jack said not to worry about it anymore. I think he's going to make sure you deposit the full remaining amount. Mom stepped towards me, her expression suddenly conciliatory. April, honey, you need to call him. Tell him we don't have that kind of money right now. We can continue paying year by year like we've been doing. I looked at her incredulously. That option doesn't work for me anymore. I don't trust you. And I'm not living with people who would steal from me and lie to my face about it. I turned and went to my room, pulling out my suitcase from under the bed. I started throwing in clothes, books, toiletries, anything essential. My phone buzzed with a text from my friend Rachel. Doors unlocked whenever you get here, guest room is all yours. 20 minutes later, I was packed. My parents stood in the hallway, watching silently as I wheeled my suitcase past them. You're making a mistake, Dad said, his voice low, we're your family. I paused at the front door. Family doesn't exploit each other, family doesn't lie and steal. I don't know what you are to me anymore, but it's not family. And with that, I walked out, loading my suitcase into my beat-up Toyota. As I pulled away from the house I'd grown up in, I felt something unexpected, not sadness or anger, but relief, pure, overwhelming relief. That night at Rachel's apartment, I slept for 10 straight hours, the first real rest I'd had in 2 years. When I woke up, there were 3 missed calls from my mother, 5 from my father, and 1 from Uncle Jack. I called Uncle Jack back first. I'm getting on a plane tomorrow, he said without preamble. I'm going to have a very direct conversation with your parents. It's better if you're not there for it. I already left, I told him, I'm staying with a friend until I can find an apartment. Good girl, he said, approval warming his voice. Use that money I sent to get yourself set up properly. After we hung up, I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to think about the future with hope instead of dread. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Gabrielle. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. You've ruined everything, she screamed the moment I picked up. Her voice was raw, hysterical. They're making me move out of my apartment. They took my car, they're going to sell it because of you. I held the phone away from my ear as she continued her tirade, each accusation more ridiculous than the last. According to Gabrielle, I had deliberately orchestrated this whole situation to destroy her life. As if I'd spent 2 years working myself to exhaustion as part of some elaborate revenge plot. When she finally paused for breath, I spoke calmly, none of this is my fault, Gabrielle. Mom and Dad stole money meant for my education and spent it on you. They made me pay rent while giving you a free apartment. They made me work 2 jobs while you barely worked one. If your life is different now, it's because it should have been different all along. I hate you, she spat. Everything was perfect before you went crying to Uncle Jack. Perfect for whom? Not for me. I took a deep breath. Look, I didn't do this to hurt you. But it's time for you to grow up and provide for yourself. That's what adults do, right? Isn't that what Mom and Dad always told me? She hung up without another word. I spent the next 2 days apartment hunting. With Uncle Jack's generous fund, I could afford a modest one-bedroom not far from campus. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean, safe, and most importantly, mine. I signed the lease immediately, feeling a surge of independence I'd never experienced before. On the third day, Uncle Jack called and invited me to lunch at a small bistro downtown. When I arrived, he was already seated, his broad shoulders and silver-streaked hair easy to spot. He stood to embrace me, and I was struck by how much I'd missed him. He'd always been more of a parent to me than my actual parents. Over sandwiches and iced tea, Uncle Jack laid out what had happened. He'd flown in the previous day and gone straight to my parents' house for what he described as the most unpleasant conversation of my life. He'd demanded they pay the remaining tuition for my junior and senior years immediately. When they claimed they couldn't afford it, he'd threatened legal action, reminding them he had evidence of their agreement, emails and bank transfers clearly indicating the purpose of the funds. My parents had eventually capitulated, agreeing to liquidate some investments to cover what they owed. Uncle Jack had also informed them that he was cutting off all financial support to them personally. For years, he'd been sending them monthly transfers, family support, he called it, which had significantly supplemented their income. That money will now go directly to you, he told me, pushing a folded piece of paper across the table. I opened it and gasped at the figure written there. It was more than I'd made in 6 months at the cafe. I can't accept this, I protested. Uncle Jack waved away my objection. You can, and you will. Your only job now is to focus on your education. No more cafe, no more late-night freelancing. Just study. Rest. Be 20 years old for a change. His eyes, so similar to my father's yet somehow kinder, softened. And when you graduate, there's a position waiting for you at my company. Entry-level salary, but with room to grow. You'll start from the bottom like everyone else, but I have no doubt you'll rise quickly. I struggled to find words, but why me, why not Gabrielle? She's older, she already has work experience. Uncle Jack snorted, your sister has never worked a day in her life, not really. And now that your parents can't subsidize her lifestyle anymore, we'll see what she's really made of. He leaned forward, but you, April, you've proven yourself 100 times over. Your work ethic, your resilience, your integrity. Those are the qualities I need in someone who will eventually take over my company. I nearly choked on my tea. Take over? Uncle Jack, I don't know the first thing about running a company. You'll learn, he said simply, besides, who else would I leave it to? Your parents have shown their true colors, and Gabrielle. He shook his head. There's no one else I trust. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe, really breathe. I spent the remainder of the academic year focusing solely on my studies. My grades improved immediately. I slept 8 hours a night. I started jogging in the mornings, feeling my strength return as the constant exhaustion faded. The first 2 weeks after moving into my apartment, I did little more than sleep. It was as if my body was finally claiming all the rest it had been denied. I didn't set alarms. I didn't make schedules. I just existed, healing from 2 years of chronic stress. When summer arrived, I packed my bags and went to Uncle Jack's ranch, just like I used to. We spent the entire summer traveling across the state, visiting national parks, trying local restaurants, and having long conversations about everything and nothing. For the first time in my life, I felt truly valued. My parents and Gabrielle tried to contact me occasionally, but I maintained my distance. Through social media, I learned that Gabrielle had moved back home and taken a full-time job at another marketing firm. No more fancy apartment, no more new car, no more weekend getaways. She'd had to adjust to living on just her salary, something most people her age had been doing all along. My parents, too, had felt the financial impact of Uncle Jack's decision. Without his monthly support, they'd had to increase their own work hours to maintain their mortgage payments. The lavish vacations had stopped. The fancy dinners out had become rare treats rather than regular occurrences. Some distant relatives suggested I should feel guilty for my family's reversal of fortune. I didn't. Their current situation wasn't punishment, it was reality. The reality most people lived with every day. They'd simply been insulated from it by Uncle Jack's generosity, which they'd abused. As I entered my junior year, I found myself looking forward to the future with genuine excitement. I'd chosen to major in business with a minor in environmental science, preparing for my eventual role at Uncle Jack's sustainable energy company. I'd made new friends, real friends who valued me for who I was, not what I could do for them. Sometimes I think about my family, about the bizarre dynamic that had seemed so normal to me for so long. I don't hate them. I don't even blame them anymore. They made their choices, and I made mine.